Welcome to the Boom Clap podcast, where culture and conviction collide. I'm Rita Rogers.
And I'm Cecily Dickey.
All right, today we have Amber Landry on with us, who we've had on before, but it's been several years, so she's going to be new to most of you, but, or not even most of you. What am I saying? She's going to be new to the new listeners here, but a lot of you have heard from her once, and I know you appreciated it then. This is a different conversation we're having with her, and like Cecily and I were talking just after we recorded and before getting on now to record the intro, this is an episode not to miss. At the end, we were talking to Amber and she's like, we got kind of philosophical, didn't we? But like, that's kind of where it needed to go. And she just kind of expressed that a lot of times people want the really practical things, which we talk a lot about at the beginning, practical situational awareness. She talks about being prepared, how to help your kids be prepared, things that they should be looking for, because she does self-defense in a different way. That is really intentionally geared towards women. And it's wonderful. But at the end, we just get into motherhood and the root of how we're living and being able to choose how we live. And I don't know, she talked about kind of afterward just how normally it's really those practical things, but some of these other things that are more philosophical help us frame the way we get into all of these practical, more intentional aspects.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about it except for that it is one of my favorite episodes I think we've ever done. So favorite that I had to emphasize every single syllable in favorite because it's just so good. And I'm praying for you guys as you listen to it because I really feel like God is going to speak to many of you through this episode. That is my prayer.
It felt very therapeutic at the end. Like if you, stick around for the end, like that end is so solid gold. So anyway, I want to thank one of our sponsors before we get in, Rocasa Organics. If you haven't heard of them, they are a natural wellness company / natural cleaning products. It's a one-stop shop. It's like the Amazon for everything natural for your home and body.
It's a great way to describe it.
Except for it's not Amazon. It's a small business that you can support. And one thing I love about Rocasa also, I will say, the owner has specifically hired people who lost their jobs during COVID. She's been really supportive of people from that area as well. So I just love everything about Rocasa Organics. You can go to the link in our show notes. You can go to rocasaorganics.com, use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order. And please leave us a review. That's one other plug I'm going to give before we get into it with Amber. Please leave us a review if you hadn't. Hit the bell wherever you listen. Follow us on Apple. Hit the bell on Spotify. So we pop up and populate on your phone whenever we have a new episode. We really appreciate your reviews and we appreciate you listening. So are you ready to get into it, Amber?
Can't wait.
All right. Hi, Amber. We are so happy to be talking with you again. Cecily just looked up before we got on, and the last time we had you on was November 2021. So it's been a minute since we talked to you, and I know our listeners loved it last time. We have new listeners now that will love to hear from you. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. You kind of have a niche in self-defense for women, but it's more than that. So will you kind of just give our listeners a description of what you do and who you are?
Yes, for sure. I can't believe it's going to be almost 4 years. Oh my gosh, time has flown by. So I feel like my genre is definitely more self-reliance, like empowerment. You know, I think that the self-defense aspect is really a sexy topic for people, and maybe somewhere where they don't find a lot of relatability in that world when they're looking for self-defense, inspiration, and education, really. And so, I think there's a lot of traction when it comes there. But even in teaching, so I'm teaching in-person workshops, I'm teaching through digital resources and virtual courses. I have my first ever women's retreat coming up in a few weeks down in Florida. Cool. But all of this, I think even just helping women to understand that their mindset and their acceptance of their role in their life and just taking extreme ownership, if we put it in the words of Jocko and Leif Babin, of their life, is the basic premise of their self-defense to begin with, you know? And the chances of us having to use self-defense in our daily life or at some point in our life are semi-slim compared to our chances of having to just use critical thinking or use the basic tools that we have acquired and staged in our vehicle or in our purse, or just use our basic situational awareness going out and about around the world, doing fun things, doing our regular things, our routine things, the exciting things, whatever it is. All of that is so much more applicable. Medical skills, you know, these you have so much more of a likelihood of using. And so I can draw women in with the self-defense almost. And then I'm like, but let's talk about everything else we need to do in your life, you know, to make you feel prepared and empowered. And so that's my whole stance, is trying to get people to do the things on the back end right now, prophylactically, to give them the confidence to move forward into whatever facet of life it is that they're called to be in. Motherhood, you know, even older women, like speaking into the lives of young mothers, no matter where we are in the stage of life. I love speaking to young women, college women, and women who aren't yet mothers, who are in such a really specific time in their life where the world is more dangerous and they need to be prepared and self-reliant and conscientious. And to have the capacity to critical think is so important. So that's what I do. I'm also a mom to 3 beautiful children, and I homeschool them. And that's really my primary focus in life. And then I get to do all of this other work. And it's such a beautiful and fun thing. My education is in nursing. I have a bachelor's in nursing. So I kind of started in this field doing the medical training and teaching people about how they can take wellness into their hands in their home, whether it's dealing with contingencies like emergency medicine, minor issues, or my favorite, natural wellness. And again, the prophylactic aspect of let's take care of everything on the back end so that we're not having to always be in survival mode on the other side.
Yeah. These are things that all hit really close to home for Cecily and I both. These are things that we find very important as well. And I think it's interesting. I never realized, but you do that on Instagram, kind of like draw people in with a sensational, you know, and then push the practical out. And that is so good. I never realized that, but that's kind of what we have to do with everything. Not even this, you know, it doesn't even apply just to the self-defense conversation, but it's almost like how everything is anymore. Everybody needs drawn in with the sensational, you know, the self-defense portion in your case. And then the practical is what we really need, though. We don't need this, you know, everything. We do need the self-defense portion, but you know what I mean? That's not the main thing. So that's really interesting. I was reading a little snippet from an article you did with a local newspaper, and you said self-defense is not something we hold in our hands. It's something that sits between our ears. I'm like, oh, that's good. That is really good. So
I'm pretty sure they forgot to quote that was a Colonel Jeff Cooper quote. So when I said that, I was like,
well, I gave you credit in my head, and it was really good. But anyway, so self-defense versus situational awareness. Can you kind of go there for a minute?
I mean, situational awareness is the first step of our self-defense, and it's something that we should always imply. I tell my kids, I tell my family, I tell my friends constantly that the fight we want to be in is the fight we never have to show up for. Like, I am not looking for a fight, right? We carry these, and my kids say that all the time, like, well, just go there, Mom, like you have your gun. And I'm like, no, I don't like the feeling of this place. I don't like this gas station right now. I don't feel good about it. So I'm going to drive to the next gas station because I've kept my gas tank above E and I've given myself options. You know, we're not here. And so we don't want to get in a fight. We want to go on to live our life in a non-litigious system the next day, right? Because self-defense is great when we need to employ it, but there's a whole due process that happens after that. And also the moral implications, the ethical implications of what we have to live with. And it's so much more than just being a baddie, right? Like, we don't ever want to do that if we don't have to. And so situational awareness not only helps us to avoid danger and to spot the danger before it sees us and to just avoid it completely, but like for me I would say I am like a very well-rounded woman in the sense that I'm also going for the beautiful aspects of life. Like I'm also the nurturer who wants to focus and hone in on those very detail-oriented and very present parts of our life. And so when I can teach myself or my children or somebody else to be situationally aware, I'm also helping them to ground themselves in the current moment, which helps to displace anxiety and stress and that absent-mindedness where we're not even focused on the beauty of what's happening around us. And it gives people the capacity to enjoy life more. And that was always my plan from the start with my kids. Was I want them to see the world through a clearer lens so that they can enjoy and soak up this world more than the average person can, not just because I wanted them to be these prepper children. Like that wasn't the initial goal. That's almost just an added benefit, right? Because on a daily basis, what are they gleaning from employing these practices in their life the most? It's going to be the intentionality, the ability to be present, the ability to understand other people's emotional state, whether that's to be compassionate or to protect themselves from somebody who's mentally unstable. I love both options for them, but the fact that I'm not just focused on we need to stay away from the bad people and more like we need to be aware of when people are having a really hard time in life, because we're here to be good humans too, not just avoidant humans, right?
Yeah.
So the situational awareness. I actually
wanted to say to you, Amber, what I love about you, and then I'm going to let you carry on with what you were going to say because it's all linked. But you have this way of portraying such strength, and not just portraying it, but you are strong. Like you are a strong woman, but at the same time, you are one of the most feminine people in the sense that your femininity is not just what you put on. You know what I mean? Like it is so deeply part of you. And that's such a cool thing, is that you have that strength and you have that femininity. And last week, I think it was, you were in Disney World with your kids, and just seeing you enjoy that with your kids, knowing how stressful it can be to actually take your kids on vacation and to take them into environments where there's lots of people and it can be hot and, everyone can get hot and bothered. And just the way that you were so prepared for anything that your kids or you might need while there, it really brought to life what you just said about you don't raise your kids this way so that they can be like the ultimate preppers, but so that they can just see life really clearly. And seeing you guys in Disney World was such a clear example of that.
Thank you so much. I love that you said that too, like that you're so strong, but you're so feminine, because many days I feel like I'm not sure if I'm balancing both correctly. But I love that you said that, because I am no different than either of you or any other woman out there. And that's why I speak so heavily to women. And I'm so passionate about gathering women together and having those conversations, because there is nothing. I mean, okay, I am uniquely made, right, by my creator, but there's nothing unique in the things that I do or the capacity I have or the way that I think that's different from any other woman out there. I learned so many of those skills from my own mom, and some of that was her own need to survive situations, or the way that my dad had helped to empower her. And so I witnessed those qualities, and that's what I embodied. And I hope my children take that away from being raised with me, especially my daughters. But I love that I can say, I'm glad that that's attractive to you, because you can be the exact same way. All of those characteristics and the ability to connect to people and have emotional empathy, but then also have that resilience and that strength, and to understand your children better than anybody in the world, and to understand humanity better than any other gender, just because of the way we were made, is a female quality. It's not an Amber quality. I wasn't trained tactically for half of my childhood or have any bizarre sort of experiences that differentiate me from anybody else. I feel like I'm very average. I've just chosen to intentionally see things and apply different methods to my life in ways that have created the changes that I love. And maybe some women don't love them or they're not ready for them yet. But I feel like at some point in their life along their journey, women usually show up to the table and say, I wish I would have listened. What can I do now?
Very good.
I think intentionally seeing things as is a choice. What you just said, that is so important because it is a choice to be intentional with anything in your life. But when it comes to, situational awareness, whatever we're talking about here, self-defense, all of those things, just preparedness, and our femininity, all of that is an intentional choice. And I would say Cecily hit that spot on with you. Like, you are so both of those things. You are so strong and so feminine. And I hadn't really put that together in my mind, but that is one thing that draws me in so much to you. One thing you sort of struck on right there is just how women have the unique ability to use their instinct and emotion, and that is unique to us. And I would like you to elaborate on that a bit more if you could.
Yeah, this was something that I dove into pretty heavily studying myself. Prior to initiating the first women's courses that I had when I was still working with Fieldcraft. And this was back in 2021. And I wanted to stand up a women's course, and they weren't sure at the time about it. They thought that women and men should train together. They didn't want the women to feel like they had to be trained differently. And I was like, well, what if we flip that on our head and we say that we want to train them differently instead of making them feel like they can't fit in at a male course because we want to speak to the differences, and let's just give it a try. And so thankfully they were willing to do that with me, and it was such a hit. And it went on to be one of the top selling courses the company had that year, would sell out every time. But the way that I built the curriculum in the very beginning was to sit those women down and tell them everything you have ever thought about yourself as being a weakness is your strength. And so we are going to unwrite that entire script in your head of you're too sensitive, you're too emotional to do what you have to do in order to defend life. Gavin Becker has a great quote in his book about defending the gift or protecting the gift. And he says that motherhood gives women permission to be violent. And sometimes for the first time in their lives, women can move into that very primal place. But women have continuity between their left and right brain. So where men can compartmentalize a lot, which is their gift, right? God did not make a mistake when he created men the way men are created and women the way that they're created, even when it comes to the functionality of our brain, especially then. But women have the ability to compartmentalize. They can focus. They can be very statistical. They can be analytical. And a lot of times women are told you're reading too deep into this or you're too emotional or whatever that may be. But it's because of the continuity between the left and right brain that women are constantly jumping between that rational mind and that emotional and sensitive mind. And it makes us the nurturers that we are. And it's one of the beautiful gifts women bring to humanity, to be able to see humanity for what it truly is, right? I mean, there's a reason why when we have awful people in the world, people say that's a person that only a mom could love. There's meaning behind that statement. And so I explained to those women, what you're feeling, this surge of hormones, the surge of emotions, it's okay. That's not your weakness. You simply have to acknowledge that that's there and give yourself permission to work through that instead of collapsing or feeling paralyzed in that moment. Well, I can't be precise with whatever next decision I would have to employ, or I can't lead my children, or I can't be emotionally okay in this moment because look, I just lose it. No, that's a choice, right? You also have the choice to look at it and say, I know myself. I know how I will react in this scenario. Let me give thanks and be grateful for the good parts of that, because that's what connects me to my children. That's what allows me to have beautiful relationships with other women. That's what allows me to be this helpmeet to my husband, or whatever it looks like for you. You accept that, but then you have to start training yourself to move on to the what next. We don't stop there at that emotional part. We don't stop at the, I'm only blinded by my feelings in this moment. Okay, well, that's true for this second. And you acknowledge that, but you set that down and then you move on to the next step, because you also have the capacity to be strategic and analytical and precise. You have the capacity to breathe, to calm yourself down, and to move through whatever that sympathetic nervous response you're feeling is. I've found for women, it's simply a lack of understanding about what's happening in your body, this surge of hormones, this cascade of whatever's going on, the trembling in your hands, the sweating, the tunnel vision, whatever it is, that's a normal. It's a physiological response to stress. When you learn how to deal with that, sometimes it's simply through breathing and grounding yourself. Oftentimes it's through having a plan, having gone there in your head already. Like, what is the situation that scares you the most? Where do you feel the most vulnerable? Okay, let's breathe and let's get through writing it out, even writing out what you're most scared of, writing out what your resources are. What have you trained with? What do you have on you on a daily basis? It doesn't have to be a firearm. It could be, and it may not even be a weapon. The situation you encounter may not have anything to do with physical danger. It may have to do with a medical emergency, or it may have to do with being lost, and your cell phone's dead, and now you have to figure out how to navigate back to somewhere where you feel less vulnerable. So I hate to just give you defense scenarios, but walk through these things so that like, oh, I should probably add a map to my car. Or you know what? My cell phone charger hasn't been working in my car. It's been dead for months, and that's so annoying. Like, the cord broke, but why don't I, order a $10 phone charger and solve this problem for myself? Why don't I get a $5 map and solve this problem for myself? So that if this happens again, I'm not stressing. And training, that's what separates the average person from people like first responders or medical professionals or law enforcement who respond, hopefully, in the face of stress and chaos with reason and knowing what their next steps will be. It's not because they have superhuman qualities. It's because they've trained and they've exposed themselves to scenario-based training. They've exposed themselves to real life scenarios where they've had to learn how to be this person. We can do that as women. We just have to be willing to sit down with our thoughts, with our fears, with our vulnerabilities, and walk ourselves through those trainings, and have those conversations, play the what if games with our families. And so it sounds uncomfortable, and sometimes it is, especially in the beginning, but that's how we get from, I can't be a person who does this, like I need my support people, whoever that may be, to I feel empowered. Even if I'm a single mom, I don't have a husband that I can rely on in those moments. And even if I did, just being the person that I am, I want to be an asset to that husband, that protector. I want to be 4 eyes instead of just 2. I want to be able to also have his back, or have his 6, like people in the tactical world would say. And then together safeguard the family, or together safeguard each other. Like, for me, being part of a team and bringing my unique strengths and capabilities to the table feels so much more authentic than being a person that needs to be taken care of or needs to be sheltered exclusively and plays no part in prevention or tackling a situation, whatever that situation may be.
My name is Walker, and I'm Cecily's son. Today I get to tell you about World Watch News, which is a 10-minute news program that I get to watch every morning with my family. Each day at breakfast, we gather around to hear the latest news and learn about the cool feature stories that the Christian journalists at World Watch have produced. It's a great way to keep up with current events and build news literacy from a biblical perspective. My favorite part is at the end of each episode where the Big Bash says, "Remember, whatever the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand." I think you should give it a try with your family as well. So go to worldwatch.news or click the link in the show notes to enter the code BOOMCLAP25 to get a 90-day free trial.
Absolutely. I really loved the point you made. Just so simple. Get the $10 phone charger. Get the $5 map. I find, and maybe this is just me and my life and my family, but we tend to just make do with the most random things that have worked for us. But it's like, I feel like I'm getting to the age, but also to the wisdom of like, sometimes just having, and this isn't everything. I'm specifically thinking of farming right now, like our little farm that we have here. It's like we make do with the most random things in order to save money or to not have to go out and get the thing that we need. But there is so much worth in just having the right gear. Like functionality is so important. So yes, like being able to have someone 6, but also just like equipping yourself with the right things is so necessary. Like I even saw this thing on the back of your stroller when you were in Disney World, just this thing that hung down off the stroller with water bottles and wipes and snacks.
It was an over-the-door shoe organizer from Walmart.
Yeah.
It was like $6.
Exactly. It's so worth it. Like when I think back to, we went to Disneyland when our kids were really little and we actually won the trip. This was a bit of a surprise and it happened quickly. So we went to Disneyland and we had these 3 very little kids and we just kind of made do. We had like this overstuffed diaper bag full of stuff. And every time we needed something, like everything had to come out and it's stressful. And I'm like, wow, why did I never think of just like this cheap little tool that serves such a great function? And it's true in every area of our lives. I saw another reel that you did where talking about like people moving or having to pack their car full of all their belongings and stuff, and then taking out their jumper cables when instead they actually should have just made them more accessible because they need them, So that's really great. And is there any like gear that you say, like every woman should have this, every family should have this, this is going to make your life easier?
So I personally love the brand NOCO, but a car, like a jump start system that's self-contained in your vehicle is huge. Having to wait for somebody else to donate their battery it's a beautiful thing. I live in a small town, like that's, Uncle Mark's going to come with his jumper cables and jump your car if you need it. But why, if you could have a simple tool that would offset any need for having somebody else help you, or you get to be of service to somebody else. And there's multiple situations I've found myself in where it was dangerous to have to wait for somebody else to use their donor battery. And I needed a self-contained jump start. That's huge. Medical gear. So I always in my vehicle have an EpiPen, especially now with the opiate epidemic in the United States. I have Narcan. I keep that in there just for emergencies. And then I have like basic stop the bleed kits, tourniquets, and I make sure that my kids and whoever's with me knows how to use them. So that's a huge thing to have. You will most likely probably use Band-Aid and ointments more than anything else. And so you definitely want to have those too, but just basic medical is a huge benefit. A battery pack for your cell phone is also huge. Like people are helpless without the ability to navigate and the ability to communicate. Even at Disney, like I was using AirTags to track my kids in case they were to get separated from me. And so if my phone's not charged, I can't track my kids. And then you're like, well, I could call somebody else and they could log into my iTunes account to track them. And it's like, do you know your iTunes password? Or do you just have that saved in your phone? Or is that in the notes section of your now dead phone? It's like a full circle of like, we are so dependent on one small little tool. And if that tool goes dead or loses service, we aren't really sure what the next step in our contingency plans are. So I love having a backup battery pack just so that's never something that you have to deal with. They have the ones now with the cords that are even contained onto the battery. So you don't have to have separate cords and like a wall adapter on the back that you can just flip it out and plug it into the wall. So you don't need any extra cords to charge this thing or charge your phone. So that's super helpful to have too. I think some sort of GPS tracking device to have for the use of your family is huge, whether you're tracking something or someone. So having access to those and having those set up and established is very helpful.
Yeah. Can we talk about the AirTag specifically for a minute? Like that's something when we had Mike Glover on, he was talking about those as well. And I haven't really been a lot of places where I feel like I would need those lately because we've mostly just been at home or like really close by because toddler life, we don't travel a lot. But my oldest is getting to the age where she's going to start going to camps and going and doing things. And I honestly have a bit of anxiety about that, because it's like, who's going to have access to the cabins? Who's going to be leading, all of those things. And so that's something that's been on my mind more, is getting something like that. Can you just explain exactly what you mean? So if our listeners aren't familiar with it, and then maybe how you use it, where are you putting this for your kid? Where is it safest to put that it wouldn't is a predator going to look for that, I guess? Does that make sense?
I mean, if somebody's really I know a lot of people say they fear that, but if somebody's super calculated, possibly, those types of encounters are more rare than just a chance, the chance of something happening. And so in the off chance that a situation would happen where a predator were to get a hold of your child, then most likely, no, they're not looking for an AirTag. They have some they're silicone and they hold the AirTag, but they have pins on them that you could use to pin it to the tag on the inside of their shirt if you didn't want it. I had it on my kids as a bracelet, just to make it easier for them, more accessible, more comfortable, especially with them riding rides. I wasn't sure if something was going to irritate them in their clothing. And so there are more conspicuous ways where you could put the AirTag on them. I've had multiple GPS trackers over the years. You have to be careful. Some of the companies will market it as a GPS tracker for your kid, but it uses Bluetooth. And so you have to be within range, I had one device that I used for a little while. It was bigger, and you have to pay for a monthly service, a cell service, because it uses cell towers in order to track. I liked that one because there was an SOS button on it. So they could press the SOS button if they needed something. My oldest is 12, and so she does have a Bark phone at this time, which I've loved it. I was very much against the phone, and then she started theater, and she was in the city doing theater, which was a beautiful experience for her, and it was a Christian theater, but we had to drop her off and leave, and she was there for hours practicing for a grand production, and she's there with high schoolers and middle-aged students. And, I had made sure to have so many discussions with those in charge to make sure that they were supervised well. And I felt good about that. But I still was so anxious about her not being able to contact me if she felt uncomfortable or if something happened.
Did you say Bark was the brand you use? We have Gab, but is it similar?
Yeah.
Okay.
So her phone is a Samsung phone. We wanted to do a phone and not just a watch, to make it easier for her to
Yes, we have the phone.
The watch is kind of finicky when you're trying to type an emergent message, and then she's also at the age where she wanted to take pictures with her friends, and I want her to, because I want her to come home and share with me the people and the experiences she's having, and she couldn't do it with a watch. So yeah, and we get to approve of any contact that goes in her phone, and she only can text. She has no internet access. But it tracks. So it tracks her in real time, constantly on the phone. So that was useful. But with my youngers, they don't have phones. And so they know my name, they know my phone number. I know they can relay that information to somebody if they get lost. But I still wanted to track them, because then I'm at the mercy of them finding somebody that will let them use their phone. And is the chance of that happening high? Yeah, at a place like Disney, for sure. They can find a mom or dad for help. But what if they're injured? And what if they can't do that? Or what if somebody's not around for that? I don't want that layer of my only solution to finding my lost children is somebody else. Yeah. I want a secondary solution if I can. And that's where the AirTags come into play. The AirTags work off of the cell towers as well. So you're not paying a monthly service. You buy it. It's about $24. You connect it to your phone really easily. And it's in your Find My Phone app. You go to items is what it's under. You can name it anything. So I have fun code names for the kids, and they love to look in there and find their code names. And it pings off of the last red tower that it was near. And there's cell towers nearly everywhere in the United States at this point. So it's really hard to get to a place where you can't ping off of a tower. And so it updates super regularly, and it's has a super strong battery life. The other device I used, the battery would die within a day, and that wasn't great. So with these, batteries will last, 6 to 8 months, depending on how often you're pinging it. And then it's a really simple, just CR23, whatever those batteries are that you can change out. And so it's functional, right? It's like the most functional tool at this point that I've found that I really like, because the Bluetooth is just not working. Like my kids are not in Bluetooth range, you know, if I'm going to be looking for them, they're most likely not in Bluetooth range. So
that's right.
Super helpful. I use it when I travel, like, if I'm flying with my firearm, I put it in the firearm case. I would just hate for my firearm to get lost and then me be like, it's in Tibet, you know, like I have no idea where it's at. Like at least I'll know where it's gone. And so you can track many things with the AirTag.
Hey, this is Troy from Apologetics Canada. Have you ever noticed universities don't wait until students arrive on campus to figure out their basketball or volleyball team? Instead, they're actively engaging long before they come onto campus, and it should be the same when it comes to our faith. Research consistently shows that the transition from high school to university and career is a crucial time for faith development. Those students who are equipped and connected going into university and career are often the ones who emerge with their faith intact and are often the ones who share their faith with others. For this reason, Apologetics Canada and Trinity Western University are excited to introduce the first ever Western Youth Summit, happening May 24th, 2025 on Trinity Western University's Langley campus. What is the Western Youth Summit? Well, it isn't another youth rally. Not that those are bad, but this is about identifying, equipping, and connecting students for life in high school and beyond. We're going to have an amazing group of speakers addressing a wide range of relevant topics. There will also be a session in the morning for parents. Students will be connected with trusted Christian ministries from high school to university. For example, if your son or daughter is heading off to university, we want to introduce them to campus ministries long before they get there to help them transition into Christian community. As well, we want to let them know about various scholarship and award opportunities. Early bird registration ends April 14th. Spots are limited, so head to the website westernyouthsummit.ca and register today. Make sure to follow Apologetics Canada on our socials for more details.
So another thing that you kind of alluded to in talking about, like your daughter is now old enough to manage a phone on her own. So that is a life skill in and of itself, like being ready for something like that. But what are some life skills that you think all kids should know and that we as a parent should be equipping them for?
For sure, just understanding and knowing basic family information. You can start that as soon as they're developmentally old enough to learn the alphabet. You can start teaching them your name and phone number, especially for the younger kids. Being able to give that information to somebody is huge. Having the ability to ask for help is a life skill that a lot of children don't have these days. They have a hard time looking people in the eye. They have a hard time asking for the things they want and articulating. And that is such an easy skill to practice and teach them, because you just have those scenarios with them, you know, and you can do it it's a great way to take up space, like time in the car if you're driving or waiting at a doctor's appointment or whatever it is that's taking up some dead space in your life. You just start asking those questions. Hey guys, if you got separated, like pretend like I am just some random person that you found at the zoo, and how are you going to ask me for help? And so having them practice those conversations is really, really helpful. There's life skills all over the place. Just teaching them how to clean a basic wound, teaching them about what germs and bacteria are so they understand why they need to clean a basic wound, right? I think there's so many life skills when it comes to even the kitchen. Like teaching them how to be safe in the kitchen, how if there was, you know, a burner on, like we're not going to want to touch it for a little while. It's still hot. There's not always going to be lights or signals telling us that burner's hot. I'm like on the kitchen mindset because my kids did that 4-H cooking competition this week. And it was so fun to like watch them and realize all the things we've taught. But at one point, one of them had a knife. They had just finished cutting something and they put the knife back in the casing. And I was like, we should make sure they know not to do that when the knife's dirty. Like we don't put the knife back in there. A life skill we didn't know. We needed to explain to them. There's just so many. You just think about the practical things in life that which is we know how to be safe, how to not be dangerous, how to stay away from danger. Things that we teach them that are very critical to their safety, like looking both ways before they cross the street. But, you know, if I'm in a parking lot with my children, I just was this morning at a grocery store. When I walk out, I say, does anybody see any tail lights on? And it's a game for us now, but they know, like, if a tail light's on in that car, I'm not just going to arbitrarily walk behind it without looking, because that person may be on their phone or not paying attention. They looked behind them, but then they got a text and they answered it and they forgot to look behind them again. And now they're just going to back up without looking at you. Other people are stressed and busy and not paying attention. It's our job to pay attention for them usually. And so the kids know if a light's on in the car, I'm not, I'm going to kind of like look or go around the front of it to be careful. Like so easy, but what a life skill,
Totally.
Honestly, I think the Walmart parking lot is the most dangerous place I go. Like people are not paying attention. They're flying around and we talk about that all the time, taillights, because people are not paying attention.
We were putting salt for the pool. So 40-pound bags of salt in the car. And my little boy was like, those people right there were sitting in that car when we got to the store. And I was like, okay, Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
On a phone call, but he's just
what? Talking to your kids about this stuff, they do pay attention. We had a similar situation maybe like a year ago. Our toddler now was just a little baby, and we were walking into TJ Maxx, and the girls were like, that guy's driving around the parking lot, and he's just like staring at people. And they were very aware. And I'm like, this is so good. I'm so proud of you, that you're watching out. So they do pay attention if you're like cueing them to that.
They do. And I found my kids will get like nervous about things they shouldn't be nervous about. And so I've had moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, have I ruined them? Because they're so eyes up buttercup. So it's just like the constant conversation of, okay, we don't have to be scared of everything or everybody. We don't have to be that wary. Just pay attention. Like it's great to pay attention and just be conscientious. I mean, and we will find the way to dance that dance to where we're conscious, we're paying attention. We're like, you could be a really good person or you could be a naughty person. I'm not sure yet, but my eye's on you, We don't make judgment decisions until we have to. But as kids, they're just like judgment everywhere,
Yeah.
They're figuring out how to flex those skills. And so it's fun to be able to steer them and lead them. But yeah, there's often times when I'm like, everybody just breathe. Like you are fine. The knock on the door is not your death. It's okay. Just basic, like, let's not just open the door as soon as someone knocks. We're in a really rural, small town, but even then, I've taught them, like, we don't just open the door. We need to make sure we know who it is. Or if a vehicle pulls up and you don't know who they are, you don't need to sit there and spend time trying to figure it out. Just come back in the house, which has led to, like, them running in, like, I'm like, it is FedEx. Calm down.
That's so funny. Yeah.
They're just wary. You're not going to pull up without them noticing.
That's good.
It's just so dependent on life. I think there's a lot of basic life skills like the parking lots and like kitchen. Those are really important things to teach the kids. When it comes to like teaching children, like my children do chores, that's part of their life. I did growing up too, but I have to teach them not to mix certain chemicals. Those are things that we don't even know as children, until we make a mistake or learn the hard way. So teaching them just to look out for certain things. Like we have a shop. And so they know like, hey guys, if there's a bottle and there's a skull and crossbones on it, let's not open it. They're learning now, especially with their kitchen skills, about cross-contamination. And I found that it's gone into like every other part of their life. They've figured out like, oh, I probably shouldn't bring my apron in the bathroom with me if I'm cooking. Because cross-contamination, even though I can't see the germs. So that's really fun to watch them make those connections. I mean, if you're on a farm, there's life skills that definitely come with being on a farm, like not walking behind the animals or making sure the animals know when we're coming up to them. So we don't scare them. Just many different things. And it depends on people's life, but we just have to evaluate that in our daily habits, whatever that looks like. You're urban, you're rural. Are you taking public transit? Do you drive your own vehicles? We take it on a case-by-case basis. And the things that we take for granted and we just know, we just have to remember, like, I need to make space. I need to make room in my life to take extra time so that I can teach this to my kids instead of just doing it and taking care of it. And I think that's where I'm so grateful to my daddy for always having the time and never acting like it was too much or my questions were too much. And I know he was a busy man, but anytime I had any question or anytime he was doing something that he thought I might need to use or I need to know later in life, he would pause and he would take the time to explain it to me. And then he would remember to revisit that, and maybe next time it wasn't explaining it to me, but it was showing it to me. And then maybe the next time it was having me do it and show him. And I know it would have been so much easier for him to just take care of life, right? But that wasn't his goal. His goal was to raise equipped and empowered children, and especially a daughter. My other 2 siblings are boys, so I think that came naturally to them. And I think he felt like that was his responsibility. Like, my mom taught me how to be a woman, and his job was to teach me all the things that would help me to take care of and protect myself. So we have to, and that may start with us making space in our life by clearing out other noise so that we have the capacity to teach our children just some basics. You know, we can't be so busy that those parts of life are lost. That's parenting, you know?
Yeah. I love that story about your dad. That is so sweet. And as a parent, it's both convicting because I find myself guilty more often than I'd like to admit of just wanting to do it myself, you know?
Oh, same.
Yeah, it's just so much easier, like you said. But it is so important to take the time and teach them to do things. And like you said, life is busy. And so that's where we really can lean into that temptation of doing it ourselves. But that's why I think it's so important to be able to adjust as life changes. And that's something that I think you could speak to really well. Like, how do you adjust rhythms and routines that you once had that were working when you guys were in a certain stage of life? But as things change and evolve and things get like, oh, I'm running into some roadblocks here with this current routine and rhythm. Like, how do you recognize it's time to make a change? And how do you determine what that change will be?
That's such a good question, because I am so not a change girly. And like, my whole family knows this about me. I mean, they've told me before, like, if we give you a pencil, you will cry when we take it from you in 30 minutes. Like, I
hilarious.
Want comfort. The Comfort Crisis book is actually so good and so convicting. And part of resilience building for me is making myself face change, because I do hate it. And I actually, right now, I have been so convicted in this. I'm reading the Screwtape letters over again by C.S. Lewis. And you have to read it 7 times, right?
Oh, yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
But the part where he talks about how the demons try to make humans obsessed with either permanence or change, and just like addicted to the thrill of change and the adrenaline of change, or addicted to the comfort of permanence, is like an attack from the enemy, because God, in the beauty of how he creates everything, creates permanence and change going hand in hand. And we're supposed to be those people of duality that can hold both. And it talks about how, like, he created the seasons and the rhythms of the seasons to change before us over the course of a year, so that we're constantly evolving through these seasons. And that change was created specifically to also build that resilience in us of having to adapt to a new climate, a new crops, whatever that was like, whatever your lifestyle was around that, whether it was agrarian or urban. But then within the year, those 4 seasons are the same, and they always come about at the same time, and they always happen in sequence. And that's the permanence. And so
beautiful.
I love that part, because I'm like, I'm trying, you guys, I try. It's not natural for me. But being a person that can have that, hold that duality, is so crucial to being the well-rounded human that we were created to be. For me, I pray constantly for discernment to know when to move into a new stage, or to know when I am moving outside of the will of God, whatever that looks like, because his will for our life will involve change, and it will involve evolving. And to just have my eyes open to that. The tagline in my business is Eyes Up Buttercup for so many reasons. But like, I have to stay Eyes Up Buttercup. And the thing for me that has really helped me navigate change has been being aware and open to pain points and realizing when something's not working. Now, just because something's not working doesn't mean it's time to abandon ship or jump ship.
Right.
It just means there needs to be a recalibration of some sort. We need to revisit it. Life's going to be complicated and complex and tricky. It doesn't mean we run from all of that. And I know that sounds interesting coming from a divorced woman, but I feel like I can speak to that probably authentically more than some people can. Is we have to know when the things in our life that aren't working are needing to be recalibrated and resolved, or when we're needing to shift and we're needing to move into a new season. And we can't follow the feelings of ease. Like that's never going to be the route that shows us when it's time to change. Because again, life is complex and most of the paths we take are never going to be easy. Oftentimes changing is very hard and it's the harder path. But we have to understand what's going to lead us to the ultimate goal of what we're seeking or what we know God is seeking for us in our lives. And that's the arrows that we have to follow. And it will move us through seasons of permanence and it will move us through seasons of change. But for me, it's always the pain points. Like when are the pain points popping up? And let me take the time to sit down and evaluate them and figure out, is it a me thing? Is it a heart posture? Is it a mindset shift? Or is it I need new tools or I need to move out of this space? I need to sell this house. I need to get in a different vehicle. I need to choose a different curriculum. I need to consider bringing somebody in to teach this subject with my kids. I need to consider counseling. I need to consider a diet change. I need to wake up earlier in the morning. I need to exercise more days a week. Like whatever it is, all of those things I just said are hard. They get us out of our comfort zone. But it depends on what's your pain point and what's your end goal. And we have to listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. So glad I asked that question. And one thing that I really want to pull out for people is, like you said, take time to evaluate. So what are the pain points? Those are generally pretty obvious to us. Mm-hmm. But we don't take the time to evaluate because no one has the time or they don't think they have the time, which is what I think you teach people to do so well is like your life is really full. It's really full. But by taking the time to evaluate things like pain points or potential dangers, you're actually saving yourself time and sanity in the long run. And so that's something I would really encourage people to do. And I'm actually going to do the same thing for myself today. I'm going to take some time later today and be like, what are my pain points? And what can I do about it? Like, you know, really evaluate.
Rest is a requirement for a well-rounded, very self-reliant life or a confident life. You know, I think I'm really grateful to my Southern culture for many things, but I think that is one thing it has done well is it has really, it taught me about how to rest well. And so, and you may have to plan for your rest. It may have to be something you schedule, but you know, sitting down with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever it is and a notebook and just really giving yourself the space to think is so countercultural to some people. Yeah. And I even find myself, if I am sitting down doing nothing, you know, except evaluating my life and being grateful for whatever it is that the birds singing or the sun on my face, we feel and hold such guilt. We're like, I need to be doing something else. Like, says who? Right. Says
Amen.
who? Yep. Why have we bought into that? You know?
Yeah.
I do this to myself constantly. I think especially being a single mom with being like, if I put the ball down, nobody's going to pick it up. Like I can't, there's not one day that goes by that I can drop the ball. And there's a lot happening here. You know, I have a big house and land and all the things. And so when I sit down, I'm like, it's constant shame. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, who said it has to be like this? There's absolutely no way to live a full and thriving life without reflection and rest and just joy and peace in those moments. Like, why have we been made to believe that that's such a selfish thing or that that's a lazy thing? Like, that's ridiculous. So we have to work backwards from that narrative and like give people permission to live in that place because we have to.
For sure. And what you just said really makes me want to come visit the South just to receive some of that education. You know what I mean? Like living where I live, that's just not really the culture at all. But in my heart, I know that that's how God created it to be. Like, how are we ever going to be able to assess and evaluate and worship if we're not taking that time to sit in the beauty that He created and to allow ourselves to not only think in our own minds, but to commune with Him, you know? So I really like that. And I mean, there's no excuse for us not to do it here where we live. It's just not baked into the history of the culture. So
Oh, I can be awful at it sometimes.
Right.
And I think it's a dying art that I am like me. And even I see my friends trying to bring it back. But I grew up right on a dirt road right next to my grandparents. And they were having a cup of coffee every afternoon. Their friends were coming over. They were just sitting on the porch and visiting. Like the Italians do it well, you know, and we have so lost it. But we have just gotten buried in the, like, what do we have to have in our life? What can we get rid of to make space? And I'm very much in that season of like, I am on the cusp of radically changing things in my life to make more space for the things I want, because I'm like, I'm working so hard for what? Like, do I even want all of these things that I have? Like, okay, good. Like you've proven it, Amber. You can do it. Like for what? Proven it to whom? Yourself? Like what space do you want to free up, Amber? Why are you not doing it? And I think like we have to do that with ourselves. We have to have those conversations and figure out like, what am I just doing for the sake of doing that is stealing from the things that I want and should be doing, and my capacity to be a sister, a friend, a daughter. I am great at being a mother. I feel like I'm great at being a mother, and I feel like you guys are too. And we can probably say by default, like we're mothers, but are we doing a great job at the other relationships we've been called to be part of? Or are we just so consumed with things that have little purpose in the grand scheme of life? And this feels like we've gotten very philosophical, but this is
where we need to be. Yeah.
This is self-reliance. This is confidence. This is mindset. Like this is so much more important than a firearm you would carry in the grand scheme of things. In an emergency.
I have no idea how much this conversation is hitting home. Like I have this Instagram following that I try to nurture, but like I'm constantly finding myself taking weeks offline because I am in the season of toddler again. And I don't have that time to sit down and rest and think. And this time is so precious with these children. And I find myself when I'm doing all of these things, like you said, like, why am I doing them? I'm thinking constantly and I'm constantly distracted from the present when I'm doing that. And so we had RuthAnn Zimmerman on, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And she said, you need to chase the peace. Like God will show you the peace and you chase the peace. But peace is different than comfort, right? Yes. Like comfort is like just doing what is comfortable to you, what feels good. And peace isn't always comfortable, right? It sometimes requires uncomfortable things. So anyway, this conversation, like everything you said, is hitting so close to home right now. And I don't know, I just feel like the world is so incredibly noisy. And so many of us live lives that are in the real world. And then we also live these lives online. And it becomes this whole separate thing, and it becomes this reel running in the background, and it just distracts from what's important. So anyway, this is where my mind is going as you speak.
We see this trend right now, though, on social media, which gives me hope in humanity of the whole, like, I had coffee with the younger me today, or like the 90-year-old you woke up in your 35-year-old body and she did all these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you want to sit down and cry, just read those reels.
But that's how I live my life. Like I constantly think like, if when I'm like 80 years old, if I make it to that old or 90, like, what am I going to, and maybe that's almost too harsh on myself because I'm like, in a moment, like what's going to be important to me when I'm 80? And that's constantly what's in my brain. And that's why I'm setting other things down. And maybe I'm not as successful as some people, you know, as I would be if I frame things a different way. But what am I going to determine as success when I'm 90? You know, those are different things than success now versus success at the end of a life.
But I think, oh yeah, when 90-year-old me is in my head, I'm like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Doing all of this. But I think it's proven to us that people are so tired of feeling the way they're feeling, and they are becoming very reflective, and they are realizing, like, what are we doing collectively, like as a society? And then what are we doing individually? Like, this is not computing. This is not adding up. We spend the entirety of our children's lives like, I'm going to get ahead. Like next year, I'm going to get ahead. In 5 years, I'm going to get ahead. I'm not just going to be surviving. I'll be thriving then. And then suddenly our kids are 18 years old and driving away from our homes. And we're like, I'm almost there. Like I've almost made it. Yeah. For what? You know? or what? So I think that we should be less scared of change than we are.
Yeah.
We just have to figure out how to get there.
Yeah. You know what? So last night, as I was prepping for this episode and just going through all your recent content, I was like, I had this very real feeling. I'm like, this episode is exactly what our listeners want to hear right now. And they're going to love to hear it. Before even knowing exactly how the conversation would play out, but I really believe that that's true. This has been so good. I don't even want to wrap it up, but I feel like we probably should. Rita, do you have anything that you...
No, I don't. I can't think of a better place to end than where we are right now.
I know. I actually had something else on the list that I'm like, no, it's not important right now because this is just a better place to end. Amber, is there anything that you want to say before we wrap things up?
I think that so many of us are just hiding pains of things that we can easily change if we just release them. And if any of you listening are at that stage where you just feel like not one more day, like you can't do this for one more day, or you don't want to, or you're not just in love with where you are and what you've been called to do, not that you're just super comfortable. I'm not talking about being comfortable. Comfort is overrated. But if it's not where you feel like you are supposed to be placed in this life, your passions, your purpose, just the way that you are leading your life in any capacity, sit down with yourself and figure out how you can start finding the arrows to find your way out. Because everything else I could teach you and train you on at this point would be a Band-Aid if we can't get you out of where it is you are. And no amount of tourniquets or a gun that fits your hand perfectly or food storage can save you from a just totally misaligned life. Like we know, like we innately know what we need, and we have got to stop listening to everything else that is not the whispers of our soul.
Very good.
So good.
Very good.
So good. Thank you so much, Amber. Let people know how they can follow you. I know they're going to want to if they're not already after this conversation, and what sort of things you offer.
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. It's at miss.amber.elle. And then from there, you can connect to my website. I have digital resources on training your kids in public safety. That's a really great course that I have up. I just released a resource this week that's just a PDF workbook on everyday carry. It has nothing to do with guns. It just has to do with what can we carry as women to help make us more prepared for daily life, and walks you through that. And in those places, you can see when I announce workshops or trainings or whatever it is that I have coming down the pipe. So I'm brand new, working exclusively for myself now in 2025. Awesome. So all of these new resources are being built and will be coming out.
Incredible. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you for listening to that episode with Amber. One of my favorites, I think, ever. If you want to hear more from Boom Clap outside of the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at Boom Clap Podcast, or you can find our website as well in the show notes with different things on there, like our sweatshirts, etc., if you're looking for stuff like that. And you can find us individually as well. I'm on Instagram at cecily.dickey, or my website, thegracetogrow.com.
And you can find me at RitaRogersCo.com or Rita Rogers Co on Instagram. Thanks for listening.